He left him there to die. That was the plan all along. A one-way ticket, a forgotten wallet, and a passport that somehow never made it to the hotel. My father thought he'd buried a man with no way back. But when he came home that night, suit pressed, face calm but rehearsed, key trembling just a little in the lock, my grandfather was already sitting in the living room. Alive, composed, smiling. "Oh, you're back," he said, voice cool and steady as stone. "I have a surprise for you." That was the night everything my father built started to crumble. I remember how he used to talk about my grandfather with a kind of fearful respect. "He made this empire," he'd say, standing in front of the mansion's tall glass windows. "But I'll make it bigger." He never said inherit. Always take. I should have noticed then, the greed in his voice, the quiet contempt hiding under the praise. When my grandfather got sick, something in my father shifted. He started smiling more. He offered to handle the estate, to simplify the old man's life. He didn't mean help. He meant control. I kept my mouth shut because I knew my father better than he thought. His kindness always came with a price tag. When my grandfather was sent off for what my father called a health retreat in Zurich, it felt wrong. No family goodbyes, no luggage tags, no return ticket. A week later, an email arrived from a small cyber cafe in Lisbon. The subject line said, "Do not trust your father." Attached was a photo of my grandfather, sitting alone on a bench in a wrinkled coat, half a world away. That's when I realized just how deep my father's betrayal went. He hadn't just abandoned his own father. He'd erased him. Also, the old man's signature wouldn't be in his way. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I played the loyal son, quiet and unquestioning. But I started preparing. First, I tracked down my grandfather. It took me 2 days and a few favors. When I finally found him, he wasn't broken, he was waiting. "I wondered which of us you'd believe," he said, sipping cold coffee in that tiny room. "He always underestimated you. That day we made a pact, not for revenge, but for truth." Still, I knew the truth would ruin my father more completely than punishment ever could. We started small. I helped grandfather quietly write a new will, done by the book. We moved everything, the mansion, the accounts, the company, into a trust that could only be activated with his personal appearance. Then, we waited. We let my father move freely. Let him believe he already won. He sold furniture, called lawyers, hosted parties in the mansion as if it were his. He even changed the locks. He didn't know we had copies. For weeks, I watched him celebrate a victory that wasn't real. Every night, I called my grandfather from a burner phone. We talked strategy, timing, silence, patience. Even in hiding, he was a master planner. The night everything came crashing down felt almost poetic. A storm rolled in, wild, violent, unpredictable. My father came home from the airport, his final move complete. He just filed a death certificate for my grandfather. He walked into the mansion and found him sitting in his favorite chair. Grandfather didn't speak for a long moment. He just let the silence swallow him. Then, calm as ever, he said, "Oh, you're back. I have a surprise for you." I stepped out from the hallway, holding an envelope, the trust documents, the proof of his forged papers, and a signed statement from the notary. My father's face crumpled. First confusion, then disbelief, then fear, real fear. Grandfather gestured toward the table. "Sit," he said quietly. "It's time you learned what happens to men who mistake inheritance for entitlement." The next morning, my father's accounts were frozen. His name vanished from the board. His lawyer stopped taking his calls. He wasn't arrested, we didn't need that. We gave him something worse, irrelevance. The mansion became mine to manage. Grandfather said he trusted me to keep it alive, not for the wealth, but for what it stood for. When I asked him why he forgave my father at all, he gave a faint smile. "I didn't forgive him," he said. "I outlived him. Sometimes I walk through the hallway where it all happened. The chair still faces the door. The air still holds the echo of my father's silence. I think about the night he left his own father to die, believing money could erase blood. But blood remembers. It doesn't scream, it waits. And when it strikes, it smiles first. Just like he did that night. "Oh, you're back," he said. "I have a surprise for you."